Here again for another VB.NET 2013 GUI control video. We're going to look at checkboxes this time around. This is going to be a pretty quick one because there's only a couple of properties and then a couple of events that I want to show off to you. But first of all, let's get the star of the main event, the checkbox. Okay, and just for the hell of it, I'm going to get in a text box as well, only because I want to demonstrate some stuff with our tricks later on. Now, what's the purpose of a text box? Well, really, it's to represent a Boolean. Now, if you can't remember what a Boolean is, it's a true or a false. So this checkbox can either be ticked or not ticked. It's for allowing people to turn options on and off. So you may have played a game before in the past, and you may have gotten sick of the music or the sound, and you've had to tick that mute box. Okay, so it allows you to turn the sound on or off, or set the sound to true or false. But anyway, let's have a quick look at the properties of the checkboxes. There's not that many, really. Okay, we've got appearance, which is probably the most interesting out of all of them, because by default, this is what a checkbox looks like. If you change it to button, it literally looks like a button. And if we click on it, you'll just see it indents and then it lets go. Indent, let go. So it's still a checkbox, it just visually looks like a button. And if you want to resize the guy, just turn auto size off, and you've got yourself a resizable checkbox button. Anyway, that's appearance for you. Next one is auto check, which is quite interesting. So auto check means turned on, means I can click it and it will tick and it will untick. And if I turn this auto check to false, it means I can't click the button, and it's actually up to the programmer to tick it or not tick it. All right, and I can show you that in the tricks and tips of how to do that. I'm going to turn this back on because I'm going to need it later on. And probably the most important two properties are checked and check state. Now, there is a big difference. Let me have a quicker look at checked. So checked false means it's unticked. As true, it means it's ticked. That's it. So if you want to check if you want to see if a checkbox has been ticked, then this is the property you're going to be looking at, checked. Now, check state was introduced in about I think it was Windows XP, I want to say. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. But essentially, the check state is three states. You have checked, which is ticked. You have unchecked, which is obviously not ticked. And then you have indeterminate, which is a little dot. Now, personally, I think this is one of the dumbest things that could be introduced. It's like saying that you want something or you don't want something. Oh, there's an in-between, maybe. Really, I've never, ever, ever had to use a three-stated checkbox. I just use the regular checked or not checked. And by default, all the user can do is tick it or untick it. That's pretty much it. Anyway, it's up to you which one you want to use. And I'll show you how to what you have to do if you want the user to be able to tick indeterminate or unchecked. You need to set three states true. Once you've done that, the user can tick it, set it to indeterminate, and untick it as well. Again, I don't know when you'd have to use that stuff, but anyway. And that's pretty much it for properties. That's done. If you want to change the text, change it there. Right? It's entirely up to you. And believe it or not, there are no functions in this video that I'm going to show you because all the functions for the checkboxes are pretty generic. So I'm just going to move straight onto the events. And let's double click on the guy and find some events. First one's first. Checked, changed. Pretty straightforward. Basically, if the user ticks the box, this will fire off. If they untick the box, this will fire off. Let's get our message box going in there and do a quick demo. Tick it, fires off. Untick it, fires off. Okay, so it's not reliant on being ticked or unticked. And pretty much, if you were to use the checked state, so the three-state one, there's another event called check state changed. Now, this will actually fire off at the moment anyway, but it just won't fire off if it gets the third stage of indeterminate. And that's it. They're the two events. They're the only things that I really want to demonstrate. I don't want to jump into the tricks straight away. So let's say, for instance, okay, I want this checkbox to be if they can disable the text box or not. So disable text box. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the read-only property of the text box to enable it and disable it. Alright, so when this box is ticked, they can't type in here. When it's unticked, they can type in the text box. Why? Because I can. Now, really what you would do is you use an if statement. So you check if the checkbox is checked. So if checkbox 1 is checked equals true. Alright, so that means they've ticked it and set the text box as read only to true. Let's try it out. So I can type in here, tick it, and all of a sudden it's read only. I can't change anything about it. Alright, now when I untick it, I want to be able to type in here again. So I need to add an else. So if the checkbox is checked, then set it to read only, else set the text box as read only to false. So that'll re-enable it for me. So hello, can't type, and then well. And that's a quick little trick for you. Now, I can actually do those 5 lines of code in one. And how do I know that? Because if you have a look, checked is a Boolean value and read only is a Boolean value. So why can't I just use the checked value to set the read only property? What I mean by that, I'm just going to get rid of all of this. And I'm just going to keep that one line of code. Instead of setting it to true, I'm going to set it to the checkbox's checked value. Because the user has control over whether or not it's true or false. So then the user has control over the read-only property then. Alright, so what I mean by that is type in the box. It's going to do the exact same thing that we just did to that long if statement. Tick it, I can't type. Untick it, and I can type again. And that's simply because they are 2 Booleans. And that means any Boolean value can be on the left here. So visible is another Boolean value. Excuse me. Well, it's a bit backwards, but anyway, if it's ticked, it's visible. If it's unticked, it's invisible. Okay? So if you have any Boolean value on the left here you want to change, you can just say it equals the checkbox. And that's it. Now I'm going to quickly add a button to my form and show you one other trick with the checkbox. Now let's say, for instance, you have a button. When they click on that button, you want to tick the the checkbox, and when you click the button again, it flips it to the other state. So what I mean is you click on the button, it would tick it, you click on the button again, it unticks it. Alright, so it's a toggle, on or off, basically. You know what, I'm going to bring this guy back in just to be really a big smart ass. And I'm going to go and code my button. So when they click the button, we're going to quickly do this if statement again. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to toggle the checkbox on and off. And now we can do that the same way that we did the text boxes read only before. So we can do if checkbox, checkbox 1.checked equals false. Then we really, if it's false, it's turned off and we need to turn it on. So you just simply go textbox 1.checked equals true. So if it's false, turn it to true. And we're going to do the opposite in a second, but you'll see when we click the button, it ticks it. When we click the button again, it's obviously not going to do anything. Now we could add an else to this if and say checkbox.checked equals false. Or we can get rid of all this code and replace it with one single line of code because it's a Boolean, and Booleans can only be true or false. So really, if the current checkbox is false, then we set it to true. If it is true, we set it to false. So it's the opposites. So checkbox.checked equals not the checkbox.checked. So not is going to flip it. If it's true and goes through this not, it's going to false and going in there. If checked is false, I'm going to flip it and set it to true. The button, it should just essentially flip those values. So ticked, unticked. And you'll see because it's changing the checked, it's also firing off this event even though we're not clicking it and affecting the text box as well. Now, why are we going to do that? Because we can. There's no other reason for it. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video and learnt something, everybody. But I'm going to see you in the next video. Happy learning. Thanks for joining me.